The Bliss Business Podcast, the show about empathy, connection, and consciousness in business. Today's episode is brought to you by Zero Company, your paid search, social media, and programmatic ad experts.
Welcome back to the show. We've got a fun one. I'm Stephen Sakach here once again with Tullio Siragusa. Let's get into it. California Assembly member is proposing a right to disconnect from work bill, recognizing employees' rights to ignore communications from the employer during non-working hours. There are exceptions for emergencies and scheduling. Violations could be fined at least $100. I mean, I get it. We really stress the importance of that personal and family and work-life balance time, but I'm not down with this. Do we really need a law here? This seems very flawed. If you don't
overreaching, and who gets the $100? By the way, does the employee get it? Who gets the $100 fine?
Yeah, if the employee gets it, now you're getting all kinds of issues opening up here.
Right.
The game.
Who gets the fine?
And like, yeah, if I send an email and I don't expect you to answer it, but if you answer it in your non-working hours, am I in trouble now for
right
for doing that? But you know, I think just let the marketplace work this one out, right? If you don't respect that time, you know, work on a better solution. If you're going to lose good talent, if you're too annoying and you're working, you know, someone to death and you're going late at night with all your communications and expecting them to come back, this is, you know, kind of maybe a free market issue. I had a friend with this exact problem, and it was like texts at 3 a.m. and stuff like that. It was like, yeah, you need to set boundaries, and you know, you need to communicate with your employer that this isn't going to work out, and also it's burning you out. You know, you can't last with some of that stuff. So, you know, does this really need to be in one of those protected communications areas? There are good laws for like whistleblowing, discrimination, labor relations, family medical leave, health and safety complaints. All of that makes sense, right? That makes sense. But really, do we need to get into this? I've got some communication pet peeves, and we'll get into them. But first, Tullio, yeah, your reaction on this law is?
At first, I wasn't sure what my reaction was, and then I gave it some more thought. And first of all, I think if a company has the right culture, this shouldn't even be an issue, right? So if a company's got a culture of mutual respect and everybody treats each other and acts like responsible adults, you don't need someone from the outside overreaching and deciding how you communicate and when you communicate. But I do know that some individuals do get there's abuse that goes on. So the first thing I thought about, okay, imagine being a PA to a celebrity and you're expected to be accessible 24/7. That's not really fair for someone to be accessible 24/7. So maybe that PA, that celebrity needs to have 3 PAs, you know, that does the day shift, the evening shift, and the midnight to morning shift. So, you know, maybe the solution is you need to hire 3 people instead of 1, because that person basically has no life. So to a certain degree, for some people, that might be a fair thing for them to have that kind of protection. But then amongst like executives, for example, or managers, which is very common to catch up on things after you've had perhaps dinner and with your family, or they've gone to sleep, and you get a little quiet time, so you catch up on some emails, and surprisingly, the other person responds. Nothing wrong with that, but because that's just a mutual way of getting things done. So I think there are some benefits here for some individuals that end up being at the back and call of someone who's really taking advantage of people's time when they should be with their family or doing personal things. But I'm not sure it should be a law. So you know, there's definitely value for certain individuals to be able to have some boundaries and have something that helps them have those boundaries. But it would be healthier for an organization just valued people's boundaries and respected them. So it's kind of like one of those things for me. Can we just talk about this like adults and figure out what works for me and what works for you and just come to an agreement and that's it and move on with it instead of having some third party body deciding when and how you should communicate with me.
That seems like the communication that needs to happen here is that conversation for sure. So if we're going to put our hats on as maybe the James Madison or Thomas Jefferson of the company and come up with a communications bill of rights for the workplace, what do we think should be put in there? I've come up with a few ideas here and ask our staff. And this first one, if you do this, please stop. Okay, so this is one of my sort of pet peeve is, in defense of any of you out there who suffer from anxiety, it's the cryptic Slack message or subject line that's like, "Can we talk? Can we?
Oh man,
can we go on a walk?" Quit traumatizing people.
It's traumatic.
Yeah, what? Someone with anxiety is going to go through all the worst possible scenarios of this, and they may get stuck looping on, oh no, it's going to be about this, and then now they're going to come up with ideas for conversation points and things like that, and now they're going to be not productive, and they're going to be obsessing on this and stressing on this, and it's like, no, stop doing that to people. And if you do receive that, just quickly send back, yeah, no problem, we can talk about what. I mean, just
what? Give me some context before I have to pop a Zanny here. What's going on?
Yeah, it's just I get this a lot, and it's like one of my things is like, yes, what is this about? Are you in trouble with something or something big, or oh no, it's just this minor client thing. It's just ranges. So I'm just totally not trying to put any energy toward that at all. So I'll just quickly shoot back like, yes, tell me what it's about. And I don't know. So that's one of mine. That needs to go in the Bill of Rights there somewhere if we're coming up with this.
Do not say, can we talk? Not allowed.
Yeah. Give me more context, please. Some context. Tullio, speaking of context, okay, this one's yours. Starting a conversation midstream. It's like, someone calls you.
I don't know what you're thinking in your head. You just gotta like back it up a little bit. Tell me what's the context? What are you talking about? Like, I just love that. Someone will call you and start talking like you know exactly what they were thinking, and you're just supposed to catch up and continue the conversation. It's kind of like this idea of, can we talk? Because you have all the thoughts in your head, but you haven't shared anything with the person other than, can we talk? And they're supposed to just know what's in your mind and be like, sure, whatever, let's talk in 2 weeks. And I don't have to worry about what it is because I know what's going on in your mind, right? It's kind of the same. It's in the same line of someone just starts talking about something and you're like, I'm not sure what you're talking about.
Yeah, I feel like in my marriage, this happens a little bit every now and then. It's like, wait, what were we talking about?
Yes, context.
Yeah, it's like
I'm calling you to discuss X.
Catch me up, please.
I want to get your opinion on X. Tell me about what X is. Oh, just let me get a little more history on it. Okay, and then we can have a conversation.
Yeah, so give people some context. And my mother does this too, I've noticed, and I had worked for her at one time. She has like another pet peeve of mine that's sort of related. It's, you'll get an email and it'll be just like a stream of consciousness sort of thing, where it's not fully like sentences and words. And I'm like, okay, wait, trying to decipher what this means. And sometimes you just have to punch out. You're just like, nope, I don't know. Can you please restate?
My goodness. I've seen like ads like that too. Like someone selling something on Facebook Marketplace. It's literally like gibberish put together. It looks like a mind map that wasn't exactly put together. It's still in abstract form. All the thoughts were just dropped in one little context, and you can't make sense of anything. And you're like, either this person was doing drugs when they wrote this, or they need some serious help putting their thoughts together.
Yeah, my mom is like, not drugs. It's just, I don't know. There's things that just like complete the thought for me a little bit, so I can help you, basically. So, yeah, that's one. All right, here's another one.
Well, hang on a second. See,
Yeah.
I think a bill of right that stops you from communicating with individuals like that would be beneficial to the person who needs to get an answer to something. The other way, I'm flipping it the other way around. Like, do not send notes to someone who might respond with gibberish, unless you want to ruin your evening.
Yeah. So, I sometimes I wonder too if it's also like the voice text is, now she's got the voice text. It's like a whole new world of an extra. In the old days, it was just an email, straight up stream of consciousness craziness that just you have to kind of decipher. Now it's add the voice text into it, and it doesn't pick up something else. So it's like, okay, wait, it may not have been this word, and it meant this word, and if it meant that word, now what does this mean? It's it becomes like
terrible. I mean, like bring back the Blackberries with keyboards.
With the keyboard. That wouldn't have helped in this case, but all right, next one. Could I have a right not to be CC'd on every email?
Oh.
Or could I have
that would be a good one.
Could I have at least an AI tool that would remove me from some of these, at some point it's like, you don't need to hear the rest of this. This is just, this is really not involving you.
The AI tool should respond in like funny ways with some memes like, your boss does not need to, knows you're doing your job, does not need to be copied on every communication you make.
Yeah, I will have like, the chain of like 20, 30 emails and not be involved in it. And it's just like, all right, this is just so much noise sometimes in my inbox.
That would be cool technology, though, that you can actually respond to and remove yourself from a thread. Like kind of like if you get one of those WhatsApp messages that just randomly show up about investing in crypto and you just exit the group, right? So there should be an option on the email where you can exit that email thread. So
yeah, it could just be monitor this for my name or a reference to me. And if it happens, pull it back up and put it on, on my radar. But
I bet there's some AI too that does that already.
Yeah,
it just takes it.
It's probably there or it's getting there. So I think that's why I mentioned like AI. Can we make sure this is solved? Another one that's sort of related is the reply all kind of thing, where it's just someone trying to set up a meeting and it's just reply all, and it's just this chain of back and forth, or someone's just responding to one specific person in there. And do we all need to be involved in that conversation? I don't know. The reply all button, can we use it more judiciously? Could that be part of the Bill of Rights, is just a little more judicious use on reply all, please?
Or sometimes you do need to reply all, but you only reply to that one person. Now the other person has to take it upon themselves to reply to all to everybody else.
Yeah, the opposite. You forgot to, because they're trying to protect us from the reply all by just putting the easy reply button there that only goes to one person. So it's still, you've got the opposite side of that too. It's like, oh wait, you guys decided on that. So I don't know. This is again.
I think what's funny, Stephen, is back in the day, this wasn't a conversation we would have talking about, do we need AI to make good discerning decisions about who to communicate with? We just kind of like made those decisions because you couldn't send letters to 10 different people. You had to be very selective of who you wrote a note to and put it in the mailbox. There was no CCing, right? Even before conference call, you made a phone call and then the other person. So, I mean, I'm talking old school, right?
Old school, Tullio. Here's a pet peeve.
Now we developed all these things like, let's just communicate with everybody, everything, all the time.
Here's a pet peeve for old school: a passive aggressive Post-it note somewhere. Sometimes maybe the refrigerator's got those on there or something, but old school. Yeah, just something on.
Let's talk.
The thermostat, I don't know. It's somewhere, it's part of these things where we're all co-working and there's just the passive aggressive Post-it note sitting there that just, pounces on you when you least suspect it. Yeah.
I think this Bill of Rights should be more about pushing for the technology providers to give more capability to the users to be more in control of their own fate. So even the ability to remove myself from a CC stream that's something that should be provided by Google or whoever other email provider I work with. Like, focus on that kind of a law, right? Make it, instead of penalizing people and putting it on the individual, create a model where you can opt out. And then if the person doesn't see you on the stream anymore, they realize they opted out of this. I should respect that, right? But I think technology can fix a lot of these issues, but some of it is also we've really forgotten how to, or I don't know if we've forgotten, if we've ever even properly been trained on how to have good communication, in team environments. I don't, I remember back in the day, like I'm going back 30 years ago, we used to have these Franklin Covey systems, and you bought this book and you learn how to organize yourself and how to communicate and how to move a task forward, how to transfer a task to someone, and then it became digitized. And so we actually got some training on how to communicate with each other. Now, I don't know any company that does that. Many startups nobody's taking the time to say, this is how you deal with these communication. When should you CC someone? When should you not CC someone? I don't think we're having these conversations. I've never seen it, at least for the past 15 years, 20 years. I haven't seen it come up ever.
Yeah, no, I haven't seen anything either. So that's why we need this Bill of Rights, Tullio. This is where we.
That's it. Let's have the government dictate how it's going to be managed.
All right. So speaking of meetings, so I'm guilty of this next one. I think it's like the vague meeting invite. So I feel like we'll do this. We'll have a conversation. Oh yeah, let's put something on the calendar. And okay, hey, yeah, I'll do it. Is next Friday good? Yeah. I'll put it on there, and it'll just be vague because I feel like we all know what we're meeting. And then, you get up to the meeting point, you're like, wait a minute, what was this meeting about? And it's just like, oh yeah, my bad. I think that's this one. So yeah, be more specific. And hopefully AI could like jump in here too. Like, hey, you want to give some detail on this, Stephen? I mean,
I have to tell you, as I've gotten older, I have to write more things down. I used to remember massive amounts of information. Now I have to write things down, put reminder notes and such. And I use Read AI, but I love the fact that it brings up right before meetings about to happen, especially recurring meetings. It brings up what we talked about. It gives me some reminder notes, and I can show up prepared, like be able to continue something where we left off. Otherwise, you have to go back, make sure you put your notes right, look at your notes. It's a lot of work. Some people just remember that stuff. I used to remember everything. I used to have massive amounts of information readily available, but that's not happening anymore. So these tools are really helpful. But setting up an appointment, a calendar event, put the context of the meeting, like maybe even cut and paste the notes, the Slack conversation, so that the other people can look at it and say, oh, that's what we're meeting about. Like, I can't tell you how many times I'm going to a meeting. I'm like, I don't know what this meeting's about. What is this meeting about?
So, I'd love about the AI with the recurring meetings now. It's like, here's what was said in the last meeting. Here's what's going on in this meeting. So it takes care of some of that. But yeah, these random ones that, I'm fully, as guilty of as anyone. It's just like, we're all on the same page right now. But a week from now, we'll be like, what were we doing here? Another one related to this is pet peeve of some people is the scheduling meetings without looking at availability. Like, yeah, let's do that on Tuesday or whatever. And yeah, we all think we're agreed, and we just kind of just put it in there. And it's like, oh no, I've got like this recurring meeting, going on there, and I totally forgot about it. You should have checked my calendar too to double check that. But yeah, it's like, yeah, put it on the calendar, but look at the calendar.
Right. But then you do that, and then some people don't have their calendar up to date, and they're like, no, I'm not free at that time. But you have time open. Oh, I forgot to put something there. Or
that's on you. That's on you, buddy.
That's on you. Put a block. Like I actually have all my calendar blocks for certain things like that. I just need, it could be as simple as like, I need a 30-minute break in between meetings here, and I'm just going to go for a walk, and put a block. Put something there. It's like, think of the other person who might be using the calendar to find time, that if you don't do that, they're going to take a time slot that you didn't update. And then you have to go back and say, and make them feel bad. Oh, I'm not available but how am I supposed to know you're not available? You should have put a block on your calendar. So now, I've got to go find time in everybody else's calendar because you didn't take the time to manage your calendar right. but somehow I'm the bad person who set up a time that you weren't free. It's like, come on, just do your job and maintain your calendar. Be a responsible adult, maintain your calendar.
All right, I've got another one. This one's from our staff. And related to meetings, it's vague action items. So we're in the meeting, we're doing stuff, and it's like, okay, is this on my to-dos or not? What's the action item we're taking from here? Just tell me if I'm supposed to be taking this on. I think that one was brought up, and I'm sure I'm just as guilty as anyone of saying, all right, this is the plan, and it's like, okay, yeah, take the extra step. What's the next step of the plan? Not just this is the plan. Who's responsible for what?
Action items are like a three-legged stool. What is it that needs to be done? Who's doing it? And by when? Unless you have these three things in place, it's vague. What is it that needs to be done? Who's doing it? And by when? Like, they have to be binded to these three things. And so I'll find myself at the end of the meeting. Okay, so what are we doing? What are we committing to? And then who's doing that? And by what time are we going to do that? Because otherwise it's just in the ether. Sometime it'll get done through osmosis, and it doesn't get done through osmosis. It never does.
Yeah, and just try sitting on the two-legged stool. It's not going to work.
Nope.
All right, so here's another one. I'm probably, again, guilty as this is. The next one is using too many buzzwords or jargons. So our work language, things just that we say in work, like, I'm going to circle back on that, or let's pivot on this, or just imagine, do you talk this way at home? Is this language you use at home? It's like, honey, let's circle back on the dinner decisions until later, or let's pivot from the Italian we were talking about to Mexican. How about that? I mean, no one talks like this. Why do we talk like this?
Wait, honey, LOL, BRB, TTYL.
Yeah, I don't know. Can we cut down on the buzzwords and just use a little more plain language? And
I got to tell you, the very first job I had was with a company called MCI, telecommunication. They had a jargon book this thick. I kid you not. It was this thick. All the different jargon and abbreviation in the telecom space. You had a whole book. We actually published a book, a library of different jargon. And I can't remember how many words I actually memorized over the 9 years that I was there. And that was before we had smartphones and stuff. That was when we could remember 100 phone numbers in our minds too, because we use our mind a lot more than we do now. Everything is automatic. But that was such a thing. I couldn't stand, like, what does that mean? And you have to look it up on the book, what that acronym meant. And let's just use plain language, lingua franca, keep it simple. Keep it simple.
When I was trained as a reporter, I feel like one of the first lessons you learn somewhere along the line is what they called, hey, avoid alphabet soup. So avoid all these acronyms. You could see sentences that just have 3 or 4 acronyms in them, and you're just like, okay, come on, just speak normally. Why do we have to have all these acronyms? And the government though, if you're covering the government, they're great at acronyms. Everything is an acronym. So you just see some ridiculous.
That's intentional, Stephen, so that no one understands anything.
So no one understands what's going on. Yeah. So let's cut down on the excessive use of jargon and buzzwords and acronyms.
But if you're gonna use them, do like you do in a legal document, spell it out and then do the acronym, right? So that everyone's aware of what it is that you're talking about.
Yeah. And space them out too. So don't just pile them on so that you're deciphering one. Well, the next one comes along and you're catching up. So
I wonder if it's possible to have an entire podcast where we just speak in acronyms and actually have full conversations. It would be like Klingon language or something. I think aliens would tune in.
I'm sure we could get pretty far with that, but I don't know who would like that. Well, and speaking of acronyms, so this is another one too. It's like messages in all caps. That should just probably be banned, right?
Oh,
if you don't know, it's like, are you getting yelled at, or is this just someone who's,
I love you.
Just all caps should probably be banned. Just,
Yeah, or everything bolded.
Important. If I say the word important, I understand it's important. You just said the word. I
Right.
don't need important all caps and then more caps follow that and then a
And
sentence
bold.
or two.
Cap
Yeah,
and bold.
throw an underline
In
in there.
colors, or multiple colors. That's my favorite.
Yeah, extra point size on a couple words. It's like, okay,
Yes.
this is getting very, very, very aggressive, very fast.
The funny thing is, I've been guilty of that too. And then I had so when I started blogging, I had a coach that's like, yeah, don't do that stuff. That doesn't fly. Just keep it simple. But I want to highlight this thing. Yeah, you don't need to do any of that. You want to highlight something, make a little quote underneath it, highlighted via quote. And it was a hard thing to break away from because I was convinced that if I just highlighted something or italicized or bolded, or it was my way of like bringing importance to it. I was like, no, if you write it right, people will get how important it is because the context will match up with the importance. So that's a communication challenge too, what you're just talking about.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of challenges, so this one here, a friend brought up this last one, and this is one where you kind of have to put your empathy hat on. So she was like, why are people mad at me for asking so many questions in the meeting? So she said staff was like groaning audibly because of the 15 questions or so at the end of the meeting, and it kind of dragged on. And I remember back in school, you'd see this a bit. Everyone wants to just get out of class sometimes, and someone just keeps asking questions. And but so let me think on the other side here. So we understand why we're, some people in the classroom are frustrated. You understand maybe why some employees are like, hey, can we just, could we set up a separate time for you to ask those questions or something? I kind of get that. But for this specific case, it's not like this person was lazy or anything like that. But I looked up why would someone ask, this amount of questions? And the first answer was, this is kind of a sign of OCD, which she suffered from. So it was like, this kind of things like, oh, that's interesting. Yeah, it's just trying to get more clarity on all this stuff. But she was just really wondering why everyone was just so upset at her. So there's probably some self-awareness too that you have to have in these situations. I think of the self-awareness. I went to this conference recently, and after the conference, it was like the Q&A session, and people went up to the microphones, and I could see everyone getting annoyed at the one person who was like asking 3 or 4 questions because it just felt kind of greedy at that point. It's like there are people waiting behind you to also have a turn asking their question, and this is very indulgent of you to, not realize how many people are behind you and keep asking. And you could see the audience kind of groan when the next question would come up. It's like, come on, just let someone else have a chance.
That's an interesting one. I mean, that's actually, I never actually thought about that. Usually I just think, boy, this person really has either trouble remembering things or they're just not grasping what's going on, what's happening here. And never thought that they could have OCD. Like someone with OCD repeats things. They do things 2-3 times. So it would be natural for them to ask the same thing 2-3 times to get re-emphasis. So, I mean, I guess probably a good leader there would have empathy to say, you know what, why don't we spend some time talking about and addressing all your questions offline a little bit, because I want to give everybody an opportunity to get a chance here. And it could be done delicately. But I guess that's part of the awareness too, is realizing why someone might be asking all those questions. Because the immediate response is kind of like, why you don't remember this stuff? Are you dumb or something? That's kind of the default where we go to. It's kind of like,
I mean, that's what sometimes the people in the room are kind of thinking, that are groaning or stuff like that, or just Google it or something. This is what's going on, and you kind of wonder. And as a leader, it's like, yeah, no, these are. Let me talk to you afterward, and we'll go over some of that.
Make some time for them, because sometimes they just want the reassurance that they're going to get their stuff answered, and it shows respect for that person's needs, but also the rest of the team who might be getting frustrated, not understanding what's going on.
Yeah.
But ultimately, again, it goes back to a company's culture. If it's a culture where there's mutual respect and we're there to support each other, we're there to give each other a break, these things can be handled so delicately and so elegantly where it doesn't become a frustration for anybody, right? It could easily be, and also in a team like that, you know each other better. So you would know if someone's got the tendency to need more validation, and the rest of the team would just be empathetic and realize, okay, John, let's listen. I'll speak to you afterwards. I'll go through this with you again. I know you have a few more questions. I'll clarify for you so that we don't take up the rest of the time that's allotted for this meeting. So even that doesn't have to be the leader. It could just be teammates being empathetic to each other. And that's the beautiful thing about, we often talk about the power of empathy in business. If you do it, it benefits not just the leaders being empathetic to the employees, but the employees being empathetic with each other. And this kind of thing doesn't have to make the other person feel like they're stupid. They're not. They have a little thing. It could be they can't help themselves.
There could be all kinds of reasons going on there. Yeah. Personally, I'm more questions, the better. I'm good with that. It's like, let's get clarity on this. Let's have a discussion. You're bringing up some good points. But I do remember like those instances, like at school or something, where you could or that conference I went to, where you could just see different reasons why the crowd would just sort of get annoyed. On here. So there's like,
especially if you're hyped up on coffee. Let's go.
You got to read the room a little bit, I guess, on some of these. But
so
that one, it was a little more serious, and I want to jump into some of these other serious ones in the Bill of Rights. So these are ones that really we've kind of talked about a little bit here with our teamwork episodes we've just done. But so this first one would be the right to respectful communication. Every employee has a right to be spoken to with respect, free from harassment, bullying, and discrimination. I think, this is definitely something that probably should be spelled out for some people. Constructive feedback too. Make sure it's delivered with respect and dignity, and worthy of the individuals involved here in the company and the problem. Let's connect here and do it properly. So I think respectful communication should definitely be like, hey, if we're really getting serious on a right here, let's do that. And so as a marketing agency, we deal with a lot of different clients and a lot of different businesses, and they've got their own cultures and the ways of doing things. We work very hard at being empathetic, and we're in the trenches with you, in marketing, and we kind of know the stakes are high, right? We understand the stakes are high. We understand what's at stake here. But that doesn't mean you get to have this pattern of abusive behavior in communications. We just let go of a client because of this. It's rare, but we're only going to work with you up to a point, because at some point it's like, this is abusive and we're just going to leave this relationship. And we're going to be nice about how we separate this process, but it's like at some point, enough's enough kind of. And in this case, this was like right out of the gates, where we hadn't even launched campaigns yet, and we were like, no, there's too many red flags here, and we're going to stop that from just getting worse and kind of abusing our employees. So before it even started, before the campaigns were even launched, we were like, hey, this isn't going to work out. And we have a 6% churn rate past 12 months. This is really, really low. We work really hard to connect with our clients. Our peers have a 38% churn rate in the past 12 months. So we definitely challenge our staff to win over tough clients. Some of these clients, we understand they've had bad agency experiences, and so they're going to be a little cautious about things. But we work hard trying to work with you, but up to a point, right? So I think there's definitely this, right to have respectful communication.
And this speaks to the mistake that a lot of companies do, is to think of themselves as a B2B company or B2C company or B2B2C company. It becomes disconnected from the human element of it. It's like, we're all in the people-to-people business. So you're not dealing with a vendor. You hired a vendor, but there are people on the other side. And so talk to each other with respect. And also there's a little bit of like self-entitlement that comes in. I'm paying, therefore what? you get to treat someone disrespectfully. No, they're also putting the effort in. There's an equal exchange of value. So some of that is a sign of a very toxic culture where they just think they're higher and mightier than thou, and it's just an elitist mindset that doesn't do anybody any good in business. And today's generation won't stand for that. In the past, we were kind of like, we've all lived through being abused as a vendor to a certain degree. Like, we just did it like it was part of the culture. You just took it in the chin, so to speak, right? Whatever the client says. But it was not pleasant. Just because we did it doesn't mean it was pleasant. And I actually appreciate the newer generation saying, no, we're not going to take that. Not going to happen. I think it's better to have those boundaries. And some of the dinosaurs companies that are still operating with lack of respect and lack of dignity for other people, they're going to suffer, because eventually they'll realize no one wants to do business with them, both vendors or clients. So your own warning, change your ways.
Yeah. I mean, if your sole purpose is driven just toward that one, area of investor, shareholder value, profits, you may not have much focus or care for your vendors or your employees, these other stakeholders in there, and dealing with all these people in a respectful way. You're just think, hey, let's take the money, right?
But it's those people that make it possible for you to cater to those other people. So it's like you're actually hurting yourself in that mindset that all I got to care about is the investors. Well, caring for the investors means you need to care about the people that make it possible for you to deliver service value to your investors.
Yeah,
so there's a bit of a disconnect sometimes. It's like, wake up.
Yeah, we want to make this a win-win with vendors, with the customers, with investors, with everybody. This is what we talked about in like our conscious capitalist broadcast, is trying to get all these different stakeholders at the table and a voice at the table in these scenarios. So we're looking out for everyone's best interest. So this next one on the Bill of Rights, I would say we've kind of talked about this in the last couple episodes, is the right to a safe and supportive environment, the ability to be able to express concerns, ideas, feedback without fear of retaliation. We've talked about this as the importance of psychological safety in those team areas. This is kind of essential for productive teams, is to be able to create that environment where you can speak freely, and no one's going to be abused or hurt or in the process, and we're all there with the same goal, but we're all doing it with the goal of connecting with each other again.
If there's one policy that would probably be worthwhile passing, is really a strengthening of the anti-retaliation policy against someone speaking their minds, right? As long as they're voicing an opinion in a way that's respectful, that's not, offensive to someone else. The idea of being on, find someone if they retaliate for them doing that. That's what closes communications down, so the person who asks more questions, shutting them down is a form of retaliation. Maybe have some policies around not allowing that to happen. Set aside some time for that person. Maybe they need a little extra help. It's like in school, right? If your child needs extra help, you have advocacy and you have rights, and you can even ask for extra time for tests and things of that sort. And the law protects that and supports that. So I think there's definitely some room for having employees who might suffer from some conditions like OCD, and recognizing these things. We do talk a lot more about mental illness in recent years, but I don't think we're doing enough to highlight what that looks like. And how do you support those employees who have some of these challenges in a real tangible way, not just talking about it, creating awareness about it. Yes, we know it exists. That's nice. But what are we doing about it to create policies that support these individuals who might need a little extra attention or might need a little extra time to get through something? And so, I don't know that this bill about not communicating with someone off hours is the key, as it is more, how do you create an environment where the individual needs are being met and respected. And not only just respected, but actually supported. And I don't think there's enough attention to that. We made progress in the schools with advocacy, but what advocacy do we have in the office for someone who might need extra time for questions or what have you? I don't think that exists, right? HR is supposed to be that advocacy, but often enough, they just become the voice to the executive saying, this person's a problem. That's not, instead of supporting them, they're a problem. So I think there's a lot of room for improvement.
Yeah, and I think the future of business is definitely going to work more toward helping out there versus just, like you said, this is a problem, this person's a problem. It's like, okay, let's solve the problem versus, just cutting the problem off and moving on. Sometimes you got to, but this also ties into like this next right, which is this right to inclusivity and diversity. And so like you mentioned, it's like this right to, and diversity comes in all different sizes and shapes and colors and ethnicities and neurodiversity and genders and all that stuff. But there should be this right to be diverse and, to express diverse opinions and in all its forms. And like you were talking about, maybe accommodate to this diversity and these diverse styles of communications, using tools or methods to do that. And I think the future is heading in this way and is leaning toward that. And with AI, it'll help us probably navigate some of these things a little bit better because it'll be able to understand how different people think about different things.
It brings me to think about how so much effort and energy has been put into getting an MBA to get ahead in business, to become a leader in business, which has a lot of value and merit. But in today's day and age, with the significant growth that we've seen in mental illness cases, actually having more self-awareness, possibly even psychology training, just sort of a emotional intelligence training and knowledge is going to serve an organization best, because there's some folks who need some extra special attention, but they're geniuses. I look at my own nephew. He's on the spectrum. He just graduated with honors in college, top of his class, 3.8 average. But he's gotten there through tremendous support, through advocacy. His parents were brilliant in advocating for him, making sure he got the proper attention going to school. So he's a brilliant mind who's just genius level mind, who could have been stifled by someone's basically incompetency in understanding the needs of someone with diverse way of being. So I think there needs to be a lot more attention to this issue. The mental illness issue. And I hate to call it mental illness because it's not really an illness. It's so common today. It's just a different way of being.
It's right? Neurodiversity. It's not necessarily.
Yeah.
So I'm, a father of someone who's on the spectrum. This is something that's close to me, and I understand exactly what you're saying in that regard. Is that sometimes you just have to communicate differently, or you have to plan a little differently. There are ways you have to try and accommodate, and it's hard. Like growing up, there's teachers that just don't, understand this stuff, that aren't trained in this kind of area, and so you'll see good ones and you'll see really, poor ones at handling this kind of thing. But it just comes down to love, really. When you get down to it, it just comes down to love. Can we help this person? We love this person. How can we make this work? And I think for sure that's going to be a stronger part of the future of business. I think is where, like you said, you have these very talented, like neurodiverse people. Let's make them, feel more included in everything.
There's a good law. You know how companies, if you have a certain amount of employees and you're at a certain level in the company, you're mandatory to have sexual harassment training. It's mandatory to have various types of training that deal with workplace behavior. a good policy would be to have neurodivergency training, raising awareness around that. How do you deal with those kinds of scenarios so that you can help your organization thrive? And that's part of being inclusive as well. I don't think we're doing enough in that space, and I hope that we do, because like you said, it is a way of showing love. It's not even, it's just being human. It's accepting that we're not all cookie cutter, and all of us are valuable regardless of what's going on. And there's too much attention on the pedigree and the money, minds, but there's so much divergency that can add significant value to an organization, make it a lot more empathetic, more attractive to a broader audience of people, which will ultimately benefit the bottom line. We've talked about this many times in our podcast, but I think there's not enough policies in place. You want to do a policy, don't do a policy about limiting communication after hours. Do a policy about being more neurodivergent in an organization, making that more of a mandatory thing. Teach people to be more conscious, maybe even more loving as a result of that. That would be a good thing. That would be a good policy.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a part of diversity that people kind of overlook. But it's like you said, these generations coming online, it's like it's now being more a part of the conversation, and so it's just we're heading in the right direction, even though it's
the
it's
new
not
generation.
perfect.
Put us to shame, fix this, because we obviously haven't done a good job at it. Just saying, we haven't.
All right, we got a couple more here. Right to privacy and confidentiality. So personal sensitive information. This is, kind of the HR arena. But as someone said, hey, private communication sounds great, but could we stop using those glass-walled conference rooms with HR meetings, please? This is what a friend of mine said. So it's like, I can see that. We don't have that at our place, but it's like HR's got to talk with someone, and now people have popcorn at their desks watching in the glass-walled conference room there.
What's happening? But also,
right.
Even like in your calendar, for example, someone shared a meme this morning on Slack, and I thought it was hilarious. The person had on their calendar, pick up chicken, something like that on their calendar. And someone, or maybe it was their boss, sent them a note saying, hey, I'm trying to set up a meeting. It looks like there's a slot where you have pick up chicken. Is that something you can move around so we can have this meeting? And it's kind of like, maybe you have to hit the private button on your calendar. And maybe even if you do, can someone still see it? There's a little bit of overreaching when that happens, right? So some people end up using multiple calendars, which then causes a synchronization problems. Like I got my personal stuff on my Gmail and I got my work stuff on my work email. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not free at that time. We talked about that earlier. Like I'm not free at that time. Well, because I have a slot on my other calendar that you can't see, right? So by having respect for people's privacy, people wouldn't have to do that. And then it would create better working environment too, where I can just put a slot and it's private. And you don't have to know what it is, but you can respect that slot's taken, and it'll create better coordination with the rest of the team trying to find a time. So some of these things not only benefit the individual, but benefit the team too. Having the right to privacy benefits the team as well, because then I feel like I'm not having to do things on another system to have my privacy respected.
And this, I won't get into it here, but this is again an area where like AI is going to become very intrusive in some areas with things, and it may just find its way into this privacy realm, and who knows who's monitoring what and where this information goes sometimes. But that'll be one of those challenges we have.
Could you imagine an AI with a sense of humor and it says, you're not really busy at that time. You do nothing. You go for a walk. You could take this meeting. Then it should be a button that tells AI to not intrude.
All right, let's see. Last one. And this is really something we've kind of already iterated, but since this is we're talking about communication, probably let's just state this one: right to nonviolent communication, similar to the right to the safe working environment already mentioned. But hey, this is communication. So let's be clear on this. Should not be any sort of verbal abuse, threats, intimidation. Disagreements need to be resolved peacefully, constructively, This one should probably just be in a bill of rights of your communication at your company. It probably already is in a lot of places, but it's good to just to underline that one.
Fine, that one. That's one that could be fine. You can file a complaint every time someone yells at you, but it has to be private. I don't know. It could be interesting. But
abusive language was used. Fined $100.
Yeah,
you could just I don't know.
Well, that also applies. Like some people do use a lot of curse words. It's like that's uncomfortable for others, right? Not everybody speaks that way, right? So that could be really tricky because that makes people feel uncomfortable or unsafe if they tend to be more clean in how they speak, right? So, like, I could never work at Vayner Media, for example. Sorry, Gary. I just, every other word is an F-bomb. I would be uncomfortable with that. That's just me. So maybe there should be some policies around that too. Sorry. You're going to get fined a lot, Gary. Sorry about that. But I'm just saying.
It's like isn't it like the swear jar? It's like the company swear jar, right?
Put money in there. And then, but in his case, the company would probably be able to take trips, like lavish trips, with from the money that goes into that money jar.
With the money
I'm not picking on Gary Vee. I'm just saying, that could be another thing that people need to be aware of. Like, your way of speaking might be okay with you and your particular close circle, but it might make people uncomfortable, especially if you're using language. So, it goes back to raising awareness and communicating what people need. I mean, this goes back to the culture for me. If there's a culture where people actively communicate about their needs to each other and there's a desire to respect people's needs, you actually can create an environment that's comfortable for everyone. But that requires engaging and communicating and being open and having town halls and creating a community. When in command and control companies where everything is top down, you don't have that community. So you don't have a say. So then what has to happen? You have to have overreach from the government to put in policy in place to protect those who are not getting a chance to speak their needs. Change it. Just enable people to speak their needs. And then what happens is you become more profitable doing that too, as we've shown in previous podcasts. So it always goes back to me like some of the stuff isn't necessary if you're investing in building a community at work, building a culture of friendship at work. When you do that, effectively, you create intimacy. And through that intimacy, all these issues go away because you just communicate them and resolve them peacefully.
And, thinking about that swear sort of thing, we don't have a really policy at our work, but I think we're generally, you just don't hear it a lot. But I do think if you judiciously use it, like once in a blue moon, some word comes out, it's like an exclamation point, like, oh, okay, we're being
serious now.
So the guy who's using it a lot, it's just you're taking away the power of the words completely, and it's just going in there. And this also reminds me, I mentioned that swear jar. That reminds me of a Simpsons episode where I think Homer's got this swear jar. And, he's trying not to fill it up with money. And at some point, I think he steps on a nail and he's all, gee, this will require a tetanus shot. So he's finally trained himself into not swimming. All right. I say this every few episodes, but make connection your goal in communications, respect each other. That's it for this episode. In the next episode, is AI going to help us be kinder and more empathetic in our communications? I think there are a variety of ways it will. So let's dive in on the next Bliss Business Podcast.